Hello everyone, welcome back. Uh, Welcome back to the Thinkubator session. So we'll be continuing from yesterday. Yesterday Prithvi, explained to you the products that we make at Apico, namely SensePy and Sensely. Just to recap, Apico is a company making tech for wildlife conservation. That's our mission. So we develop technology for various sectors in the wildlife conservation domain, catering to customers right from forest department, the academicians, the researchers, and even the filmmakers and photographers in the wildlife domain. I'm thankful to Cisco for providing this platform and Li22 for making this happen. So today we'll be looking at the basics of PCB design and also the important considerations and design choices that go into PCB design with the two products that we looked at yesterday, which are SensePy and Sensely. We'll also be looking at LED driver circuit, as well as we'll be making a simple PCB design just to go over the flow of PCB design in KiCad. Finally, we'll be looking at how we can, take this design that we make to manufacturing with the usual manufacturer that you can find. For that, we will be looking at Lion Circuits, one of the manufacturers in Bangalore, who have a nice online platform which when you can upload your design, get them checked for design for manufacturing, and then delivered to your home. So let's get started. So the assumption for this presentation is that you know the basics of PCB. There are sessions in Thinkubator that you can refer to. So PCB or printed circuit board can have multiple layers in them. Layers of copper, I mean, which have tracks to carry the various signals. Now, minimum is one layer, which is on the top layer over the dielectric substrate. But usually there'll be two layers, one top and one bottom, and you can have multiple other layers sandwiched in between. So as you can see, in Lion Circuits, the specifications of what they can manufacture is the minimum board dimension is 3 mm by 3 mm, which is quite small. I would have to think hard to find scenarios where you would want a board smaller than that. The number of layers that they can manufacture is 1, 2, and 4. The copper weight that they can manufacture on their boards is 1 ounce or 2 ounce, which is 35 micrometer or 75 micrometer thickness of copper on the PCB. The board thickness tolerance is 10%, so which means if the board is 1.6 mm thick, the tolerance will be 0.16 mm. Trace width spacing is for 1 ounce of copper is 6 mil. So this is the space between two tracks on the PCB, and even the track width minimum is 6 mil. So what is mil? Mil is a unit commonly used in PCB design, which is 1,000th of an inch. Just for ease of conversion, one thumb rule that you can use is 4 mil is 0.1 mm. The annular rings that they can manufacture is also 6 mil width. So these are commonly used for vias. Vias are the structures in PCB which allow signal and data to be transferred between layers in PCBs. In a two-layer PCB, it's just for transferring the track from top to bottom layer, and in higher layer of PCBs where there are copper layers embedded within, you can choose to transfer the signal or the track to the layers in between. The minimum distance between trace and copper core is 8 mil for 1 ounce of copper thickness, or 12 mil for 2 ounce. So copper cores are the copper layers which are um, usually for ground, but you can use it for other signals as well. Usually they are for power signals, which is either power VDD or the whatever supply voltage that you're using, or ground. And it provides a good reference point for the other signals. Minimum distance between the any component and the edge of the PCB is 12 mil, or even just not just any component. Components like connectors cannot be off the edge, but the minimum distance between any track or copper core and the edge is 12 mil. The minimum distance between wires are also 12 mil. There is a layer on the PCB called silkscreen, which is usually for any information that would like to be presented for humans. And they usually are used for reference designator of the various components on the PCB, and also any board name and so on. Between silkscreen and solder pad is 6 mil for line circuits. Solder pad is where components are soldered on the PCB. So there is a layer called solder mask. This is usually green, the green layer that you see on a PCB, which is used to protect the copper pads and copper tracks with an insulating material. When you have to solder a component on the PCB, you would have to create opening in the solder mask so that the component can be soldered on this conductive copper track. Minimum width between two solder mask openings is 6 mil. So as I mentioned, silkscreen is used for a reference designator. Here you can see U1, which is usually meant for integrated circuit. Now we have seen all the capabilities of one manufacturer, namely LAN circuits. So when you're designing a PCB, you would have to consider the manufacturing capabilities of where you're getting them manufactured and design accordingly. Now we will look at making a simple PCB design with KiCad. Let's name it Li2 ThinQ demo. So the idea for this is to go over the entire process of designing a PCB. Let's make a simple PCB with just an LED and a battery, and make the PCB layout and generate the designs to get them manufactured. So now we have opened this page for making the schematic. So now we don't have others components needed to place. So we have to add those particular libraries. So now we'll open the library system and add libraries. So KiCad provides its own official symbols and footprints. So we add from them. So for this design, we'll need to have a battery. Well, we'll also need capacitors and resistors. So we'll add the device. Okay. So to start off with, let's make a PCB design, a very simple PCB design to go over the flow of KiCad. So we'll make the schematic and then the PCB, then then generate all the design files and then upload it with the manufacturer and to see how we can get them manufactured and delivered to us. For that, let's make a new project. Um, and we'll name it as Li2 think you LED project. So as you can see, you get a schematic and a PCB files when you create a new project. We'll open the schematic one. So it's an empty schematic. We have to add all the various components. For that, as you can see, we don't have any components because we have not added any libraries. So we need to add those libraries. So we'll open the symbol editor to add those libraries. So we'll add the libraries from the official KiCad symbols libraries. So one thing we need is the resistors and capacitors, so that we can get from the device. So we'll add it to this particular project. So you can see C, R, and LED and inductor and so on. Other thing we need is the power libraries for all the VCC, ground, and so on. I think that's about it. Like these are the various components that we need. We're just making a simple LED circuit. So I think these two should be enough. So now we'll make the schematic. So let's add first the battery for our power source. So we'll use multiple batteries. Let's say, oh sorry, we'll use a single battery. We'll use a coin cell. So we'll add that. We'll add a buffering capacitor. We'll add this here, and we'll add a resistor, series resistor which goes with the LED, and this is the LED. So when I hit R, the LED rotates. I mean the symbol rotates. So now if we have to change the symbol of this capacitor from a normal unpolarized capacitor to a polarized capacitor, we hit E for editing the capacitor, and then we change the library reference. And then we can either connect all of these together or we can use the ground symbol. It's just visually better to add ground symbol. So we'll do that. We'll just copy this. Sorry. Cool. So we have our schematic. We will annotate the schematic. So here's the annotation. Annotation refers to the designation of each component. So we have BT1, C1, R1, D1. So now we can actually give values to these components. So we'll have, say, CR2032 cell. Right. So now here we can say this is we want to put 100 microfarad capacitor. Here we can say 1 kilo ohm resistance, and this is a simple 5 mm red LED. Right. So now we have the schematic done, the annotation done. Now we need to assign the symbols, sorry, the footprints to these symbols. For that particular part, we need to add libraries for the footprints as well. So for that, we'll have to open the footprint editor. So here we add the various libraries. So again, we use the official KiCad libraries. We will need the battery footprints added to the project. We need the capacitor SMD, we'll use SMD. We'll need the resistor one. And again use SMD. And we'll use a LED. That we'll use a through hole LED. Let's say we will use a 2032 holder, so we'll see various options. So let's go with this particular option, which is usually easily available in various stores. So, and then for the capacitor, we'll use a electrolytic one, and for the LED, we'll use a 5 mm LED like this, and then let's say use a 0805 resistor. So how do we assign these? So we go back to the schematic, and then we assign the various components to the symbols. So for this, first we'll search for 2032, and then we'll use this. And then for capacitor, we'll use an electrolytic part and a 5 mm LED. And as we mentioned, we'll use a 0805 resistor. Say, okay, like, okay. Now we can go to the PCB part. So in the PCB, we will get the various design from the schematic. So we have all the various parts. We'll add them. So first we'll have to make the edge of the board. For that, we will have to first set the grid, so that the grid is easy. I mean, we can have a multiples of 1 mm, so it's easy for making the grid. So let's start here. Let's say we want to make a 5 mm by 10 mm board. Would that be enough? Sorry, 5 centimeter by 10 centimeter, or even that might be too much. Let's say 45 by 30 mm. That will be good. Cool. Now we have. So if we rotate the part, you won't have enough space on the board, and that's okay. Now we have the various parts. We place it properly. So there is a 3D viewer in KiCad, which will give a good idea of how the board will look like. And you can see it here. So this is how the board would look like. So you have the battery holder, the LED, the resistor, and the capacitor. So now we can choose the various design constraints for this particular design. So there are various design rules and net classes. So now the default is quite good. the clearance is 0.2 mm, which is around 8 mil. The track width is 0.25 mm, which is around 10 mil, and the drill size is also quite big. Sorry, wire size. The wire drill is 0.4 mm, which is all of these are within line circuit specification that we saw. We can make a new design class, let's say power, and we can make it here, right? So like let's say 0.4 mm. Sorry, the track clearance is 3 mm and track width is 0.5 mm and wire size, let's make it 1 mm with the same drill size. So and for example, we can make the ground net as power. So now if you want to route, um, we can route tracks like this. Right. So now if you see this ground, you will see that it is at a different track width because we set the ground track as a power track. The one thing that we can do is route on different layers. So now if we want to route on the bottom layer, let's say from here to here, we get this track here, and then we put a wire to make it come to the top. Although this is not necessary, I could have just routed on the top layer. So now the only other routing that is left is this track from this resistor to the battery. So let's save this and look at the design. So this is how this looks on the top layer, and on the bottom layer you can see this track coming here, and there's a wire to get the signal back up. Now another thing that we can do is add ground planes. So now let's say we choose the ground plane on the bottom layer and we connect it to ground. And so we fill the copper ground plane and then we see how it looks like. So as you can see, the bottom layer is full of copper with connected to ground. This pin in the LED is actually ground and it's connected by these 3 points, right? So now you could have just connected it directly to the ground plane, but this feature where you give space around and only have few copper tracks connecting it is called thermal relief. This will help in soldering, especially hand soldering, when the heat is localized to the pad and not spread to the ground plane, so that it's easier to heat up the pad to solder. Now we can do a ground plane also on the top layer. So we say for front copper and also ground, and let's fill that particular layer as well and then see how it looks. So this is how it looks. As you can see, this particular track from this ground to this ground is engulfed by the plane because it's part of ground itself. So now we have done our PCB. By the end of this session, we'll look how to generate the designs and then upload it on a manufacturer website to order them. Before that, we look at three particular designs: Sense Pi, Sense um, LE, and LED driver. Let's start with Sense Pi. So all these are open source projects, and you can find them at github.com/apico. So here's the design. Um, we went over the design yesterday. Um, so here's the battery connection. Then there is the bicolor LED. Then the entire analog processing part with the band pass, two-stage band pass filter. And the main NRF52 based module. First, we'll take a look at the 3D design so that you have an idea how it looks. Here's a PCB, the top layer. U2 at the center is the PIR sensor. The sensor output goes to this two-stage bandpass filter. We try to keep the tracks as small as possible for this analog processing part so as to not have much noise picked up. Also, we try to make sure that most of the routing happens in the top layer. As you can see in the bottom layer, there's only very little minimal amount of routing that happens. Only these two particular tracks. So this is so that, for all the tracks above, there is a proper um, reference to the ground, which is in the bottom layer. Another thing that I would like you to notice is that the decoupling capacitors, which are C3 and C5, are placed quite close to the module. Decoupling capacitors are used for making the power to the various integrated circuits quite free of noise and of good quality. So every capacitor has a value, resonance frequency, at which its impedance is low. So all the high frequency noise gets attenuated in the power signal by these decoupling capacitors. And it's important that they be placed close to the power pins of the integrated circuit next to which it is placed. Another thing is L2 and L1 are the inductors used for the buck regulator present in the NRF52 integrated circuit. So they also need to be placed as close as possible to the designated pins. Y1 here is a 32 kilohertz crystal, which is used to produce the low frequency clock. Again, as you can see, it is placed as close as possible and symmetrical to the two pins for the crystal. J1 and SW1 are for the audio connection and the switch. Since these both are digital, you can get away with placing them further away from the module and there won't be an issue. So this is overall the SensePy circuitry. So one thing that I would need to know is the analog signal processing part, which is this particular section with U3 and U4 needs to are placed quite tightly, and there is as little routing present as possible. and it's not spread across, and it goes to the NRF52's unlock to digital conversion. Sensely has as an application used for detecting if a electric fence's pole is upright or not, so that the forest department can get a warning as and when they are tampered with or they are breached by elephants. So this is the design. As you can see, we first look at the 3D design first so that you have an idea. On the left is the NRF52 module, and on the right here with U4 is the um, CC1175, which is a long range communication chip. So this antenna over here is connected to this CC1175, and as you can see, there is no copper layer below the antenna, but there is a big copper ground layer right after the antenna, and this is critical for the antenna's performance. So another thing that you need to notice is how again most of the routing is happening on the top layer, and uh, this is so that there is a good unbroken ground pad, a ground layer in the bottom layer. Also, other thing that you need to notice is there are a lot of vias in the ground layer itself, so that there is good reference point for the ground all over the circuit. As mentioned in the previous design, we can see that all the various decoupling capacitors for U4, which is CC1175, are placed as close as possible to the integrated circuit. And the decoupling capacitors for U1 and U2 are also placed close. U1 and U2 are um, accelerometer and an LDO respectively. Communication between CC1175 and NRF52 is using SPI, which is a digital communication. So you can have long tracks for communication between the two that you can see here. And also the communication between the accelerometer and the NRF52 module is using I2C, where R1 and R2 are the pull-up resistors. This also can have length a few centimeters like we've seen here, and depends on the pull-up resistance. So that's about Sense LE design. Now let's take a look at a little high power circuit design. So for this we will take a look at a driver of TPS 92515. It's an LED driver. So this is the default board for this particular chip. So here's the design that you can see. As you can see, there are a lot of this blocks of copper laid out. Before that, let's take a sheet. Let's take a look at the data sheet to understand what this particular chip is. So it's a 2 amp current capable buck LED driver with a high side current sense using a shunt resistance. The intensity of the LEDs can be varied using PWM dimming capability. So this is the schematic of a simple application that you can see. When designing the PCB, the layout guidelines is something that needs to be referred to. So this is the layout guideline, and this is the description. So like they mentioned, the various two current loops need to be as minimal as possible, and also the various capacitors present for decoupling need to be placed as close as possible. The resistance for the the shunt resistance to measure the current flowing through the LEDs also need to be placed close to the circuit. So this is the guidelines that we need to follow when making the PCB. The two parameters which can be controlled by an external microcontroller are the I adjust and the PWM signal. So these are breakout points which have thin copper tracks connecting them because they don't carry high power. And the all the other major signals like VIN, LED current have thick copper tracks. So we will look at this design in the PCB new application. So as you can see, multiple copper layers have been added. So as you can see, this is a copper layer on the front side. If you click E, so it is connected to the ground layer. This particular copper track that you can see here is connected to the switching layer, so that from the switch pin of the IC you have a big track coming out. So for when you're designing of copper track, it can be over other signals and other pads. The software by itself will make sure that it is keeping out of this particular parts. So that you can see here, it is creating a nice um, keep out of this particular capacitor, but it will engulf the particular pad for the particular signal. So that way various copper pores have been added based on the particular design needed. Components that you need to choose in a particular design also have to have the appropriate current rating as specified by the application. So that's why you have these big inductors and diodes present here. So this is about this TPS 92515 LED driver. Other thing that you can see is that various wires present in the ground plane to make sure that heat is transferred from the um driver back to the ground plane on both the sides, so that it can be dissipated and the chip doesn't heat up. This will provide greater thermal headroom for the IC to operate in. So now finally what we're looking at is we will generate the Gerber files, which are the output design files for the project that we created right at the beginning. So I guess all of you remember this particular design that we made. It's a two-layer board that looks like this, and we have a battery, capacitor, LED, and a resistor. So we'll generate the Gerber files, which are the output files for a PCB design. So for that, we'll go to plot. We need the copper layers. We don't need the paste layer for manufacturing the PCB. Paste layers are for the solder paste, which is needed to make stencils, so that we can the solder paste can be applied on the PCB, and the components can be placed on them and sent to a reflow oven to solder the components to the PCB. We need the silk screen layer, which contains all the reference designator. We need the uh, solder mask layer on both the front and bottom layer, and then the edge cut layers. Right. So let's say float, and then sorry, and we'll also generate the drill files. The drill units needs to be in millimeter, and close. Now what we'll need to do is we need to zip these generated files. So that I'll do now. Then we'll open the Lion Circuits website, and then we can upload the zip file which contains all these Gerber files. So we'll have to log in. I'm already logged in. So now we'll have and create new project. So we'll name it Li2 LED demo. So we'll browse. This is the that's not the design. Let's go to here it is. Submit. So it will get uploaded, and we'll be able to see the design and the cost. So there will be various design choices we can make for the PCB that we can see in quotation. So in the standard service, it's only 1.6 mm PCB thickness and 1 ounce of copper thickness. Usually the solder mask color will be green because that's the most common. For this particular size, you can see for 3 boards, you will have the cost as 650 rupees, and if you can make 6 boards, it will be 1179. In a custom service is where you can vary the various parameters. So you can have the PCB thickness of 0.8 mm, the PCB finish with gold plating, which will add quite a bit of cost, but it just looks so much better, and it's better for soldering also. The copper thickness can be varied. The mask color can also be varied. So you can have a white mask too with a black solder mask, silk screen. And you can also have rush service, right? So these are the various options that are provided in Lion Circuit. So this is the rendered PCB design that they can show, so that you can verify that you have uploaded the correct PCB, and you can double check that everything is fine. So if you say order now, you will be shown a summary, and then you can proceed to payment using payment gateway that they provide. So this is how a PCB can be ordered. So that comes to the end of our session today. I hope this was useful. So what we looked at today is looking at the various manufacturing specifications of a PCB manufacturer. We took Lion Circuits as a scenario, and we looked at their particular capabilities. We looked at creating a PCB design in KiCad from scratch and made a simple design. We looked at 3 different products that we had made at Apico, essentially SensePi, as well as one high power LED driver design. We looked at various aspects that we need to consider when making a PCB design, like adding ground planes, or just trying to do other routing in one particular layer, decoupling capacitors as close to the power pins as well as the crystals, then making the tracks as wide as needed in a high power circuit. So finally, we generated the Gerber output of the simple LED we made, and we uploaded it into a manufacturer's website to know what the process is of for ordering a PCB. So when we start with PCB manufacturing and PCB design, one of the first things that you do when you're designing a PCB is placement of the various components. So that is the first thing you do before you start routing. So in this particular case, this is the PCB of SensePi, a product that we at Apico made. So as you can see, the first thing we did was placing all the components. Um, Here there are many connectors. Say this is a connector to the audio jack for triggering the camera. This is the battery connector here, and here. So when you first start designing a PCB, after the schematic, the first thing that you need to do is place the components before starting any routing. This is critical because you need to know where the components are and how the components need to interact with the user as well as the enclosure. So in this particular case, we see the PCB of SensePi, motion sensor developed by Apico. We started with placing the connectors first. So as you can see, this is a button connector, this is a battery connector, this is an audio jack connector. All of them are placed at the edges where they are convenient to be inserted. Then we placed this Bluetooth module, which is the contains the main processor, as well as this contains the Bluetooth radio. So this is placed here at the edge because the antenna needs to have no copper layer below or above the PCB, right? So that is why this was placed at the edge. Next is we can see this PIR motion sensor. Because of the Fresnel lens, this needs to be right at the center of the PCB. So that is why this has come here. Next, there is, if you look at the schematic, so from the battery, there is a reverse polarity protection, which is a P-channel MOSFET, as well as a buffer capacitor. This buffer capacitor of 10 microfarad is just to provide energy when there is any surge of current drawn by the system, which in our case happens when there is Bluetooth communication. So 10 microfarad, which is not that big of a value, will be enough because Bluetooth low energy communication doesn't need that much of a current. So if you look at the the layout, you can see this is the reverse polarity protection and this buffer capacitor, which are placed close to the battery connector. Right now, let us look at other parts of the schematic and see how the placement is done. We have, this is the main Bluetooth module. For programming the module, there is this connector. So that is placed close to the module. So here, so that the routing is easier. Next is the crystal, the low frequency crystal that needs to be placed as close as possible to the module. That again you can see here, which is this, and even the capacitors which are needed for the crystal are placed close by. So any crystal needs to be placed as close to the pins and for and as symmetrical as possible to the two pins. For low frequency, it is not that big of a issue, but especially for high frequency crystal, this is important. The next thing you need to do with respect to the module is all the decoupling capacitors as well as the inductors needed for the internal switching regulator, the buck regulator. So they have two inductors in series. Is actually so, and then there is the decoupling capacitor. So both of them uh, need to be placed as close as possible to these pins, which you can see we have done here. So the decoupling capacitors are used to remove any high frequency noise present in the power signal to make it much better quality for the all the integrated circuits that are present in your system. Next, we look at this LED, which is an LED used to indicate different states to the user. So this is the LED here. So as you can see, the LED is right above the PIR motion sensor. The LED is placed here because it gives a good view and um, it's easy for the user to see when it is right next to the PIR sensor through the Fresnel lens. Also, you can see that the trace length for the LEDs are quite long to the module, but this is okay because LED takes quite low frequency digital signals. So that doesn't affect, this trace length doesn't affect. Next, the part that we'll see is the entire motion sensor conditioning circuitry. Here is the PIR sensor. After the PIR sensor are two stages of band pass filter. This is stage number 1 and this is stage number 2. This band pass filter then go to the module for getting converted to digital. So as you can see, from the PIR motion sensor, the signal has to travel very short distance to be going to the op-amp for the band pass filtering. This trace length is kept short by design so that there is lower chances of noise that is going to be picked up. So the entire two-stage op-amp, two-stage bandpass filter is done through this dual op-amp. So you can see the entire discrete component needed for this is placed all around this op-amp. And this signals after this, this is output of stage 1 and this is output of stage 2, and both of them are going to the module here. So this with this we can see how the components placement in a PCB circuit is usually done. We'll take another example to look at component placement. This time we'll look at Sense LE, which is another product that we at Apico have developed. Here you can see again, there are various parts of this system. One is there is a Bluetooth module. There is an accelerometer, a Hall effect sensor, and a long range RF transmitter. So in this particular case, main consideration had to be given for the long range RF transmitter because that was the most critical part of the system. The antenna for this long range RF transmitter can be seen here. So most of the system design for the PCB was as per this RF transmitter's antenna. So the RF transmitter needed no copper layer above or below on the PCB, and that is how we kept it. There is copper layer here on this section of the PCB that you can see here. Also, for good RF performance, the copper layer had to be about 50 millimeter from the antenna. So that is why we have this much length of the PCB. Otherwise, we could have reduced distance, which you see here in this portion. So now that we decided on the dimensions of the PCB based on the antenna requirements, then we can look at the placement of the other components. So the power source is a dual AA battery, and the connector goes through in these holes that you can see here. Now, once you place the battery, there is a reverse voltage protection MOSFET as well as a buffer capacitor. All the decoupling capacitors for this transmitter are placed all around this IC, which you can see here. Also, as you can see, all the SPI communication with this transmitter are through these lines which are present here, which go back to the processor, which is in the nRF52 module. Even in this accelerometer, you can see both the decoupling capacitors, which are C1 and C2, are placed as close as possible to the accelerometer, as well as the Hall effect sensor's decoupling capacitor. So this is how the component placement is done for a PCB first, and then the routing is started. When taking care of routing, you have to make sure that you separate the analog and digital sections of the system. In this particular case, you can see that everything on the left hand side is the digital section with this long lines. Anything on the right hand side is the analog section. So that is how this transmitter CC1175 is done, so that all the analog section with the RF is on the right hand side. So whenever there is a mixed design with both analog and digital components present in a system, make sure you clearly demarcate which is the analog section and which is the digital section, and don't let it overlap. You can also think about splitting the ground into analog ground and digital ground. And there is one point of connection usually under the component which does interact with both of them, usually something like an ADC or a DAC. Another thing that I would like to say is when you're designing a PCB is you have to design the PCB according to the enclosure that you are using. As you can see, the PCB, this is a square PCB with 4 mounting holes, quite a simple design. This was done so that the enclosure that we chose, which is an off-the-shelf enclosure that you can see here for the design, it should fit in that particular enclosure. So this is the PCB of SensePi that you can see. So when you're designing a system, especially the electronics, you have to make sure that it is compatible and well thought of in advance for the enclosure that you're using. For the next version of SensePi, which I'll open now, you can see the design here, right? It's a much more intricate design with a curvature here and 4 mounting holes. There's an audio jack connector here, which is placed on the PCB itself. and there's much more happening in the PCB. You can see the 3D version here. Now, this is the PCB, right? The reason why we made the PCB in such a way where the motion sensor is at the bottom of the PCB, and there's a button here, an on-off button here, the LEDs are at the top. This is again with respect to the enclosure that we are using, which I'll show you now. We designed the enclosure in Fusion 360, and you can see this is the enclosure, right? So the two LEDs on top are because there are these two openings on the top, and this motion sensor, PIR sensor, is here. So the PCB will go under these this part here on these four mounting holes that you can see here. So as you can see, the curvature here in the enclosure is the reason why we have the curvature in the PCB. So the PCB design and the enclosure design go hand in hand. Like you have to make sure the audio jack over here and this hole, which is here, as you can see, are perfectly matching each other with the manufacturing tolerances included. The motion sensor is at the bottom of the board, but because the board is at an offset in the enclosure itself, it comes right at the center of the enclosure. So that is how you need to make sure that all the aspects of the PCB design are in sync and thought of when you're designing the enclosure. Now let's take a look at few aspects of PCB design that are like thumb rules that you need to take care when you are designing a PCB. For this, let's open a very simple circuit so that it's easier to understand. Um, let's take this simple circuitry of a battery coin cell powering a LED. There's hardly anything in the circuitry, but we need to see that there are some design rules that we need to add to the design, and that it is taken care when you're doing the design. So for example, the design rules are placed in this net classes. So now there are two different types of nets that are present, one at default and another power, where the track width changes, the clearance to these tracks are changed, the wire size are changed, and so on. Right now, KiCad will make sure that when you're routing, these design rules are followed so that it is not too easy to make mistakes. So let's now try to route some tracks and see if we can make an error. Right? So now if we try to get this track above this line, you can see that it automatically moves the track around here so that, and it does not come over this particular track. So that is quite helpful from KiCad. But there might be situations where you might make some design and move it manually. For example, you do a pad like this and you create a VR here, and you might move this VR manually to this part, right? And then now connect. So now ground is connected to this pad, which is an inappropriate design. And this, if we given to manufacturing, will cause an error. So for this, there is something called as design rule check in most of the PCB designing software. So which in here is here. So called DRC control in KiCad. So here you can enter the minimum track width, via width, minimum micro via, and all of this, and you can run it and see if there are any issues. So here it has shown that at this particular point, via is too close to track, right? So even if we remove this via, we'll see if we run the DRC if it is okay. Now it's fine. But again, this particular track isn't needed, so we'll just delete it out. So I'm just using the delete button to delete the track. And for routing the via, I use the X button, which is the shortcuts that are present in KiCad. To just get a list of the shortcuts present, just press the question mark, or you can go to help and list the hotkeys. Here are all the different shortcuts that are present. The shortcuts that we usually need are the board editor shortcuts, like P for place an item, O for add a footprint, adding vias, adding zones, insert a single track, move an item, copy an item. So these are the shortcuts that you can follow. So usually your right, or whichever is your dominant hand, is using the mouse, and the other hand is on the keyboard when you're doing PCB design. Another thing that you can notice here is we have two different trace widths. The trace width can matter, especially when you are using high power designs. There is a limited amount of current that a particular trace width can take for the thickness of the copper that you are using. So for that particular part, there is a calculator in KiCad which you can use. So which is the trace width calculator. So if your design takes has to carry 1 amp of current, and your tolerance for the design is that temperature of the track can increase up to a maximum of 5 degrees Celsius, and the track length is 20 millimeter, which is 2 centimeter. What is the trace width that is allowed? In this particular case, it is around 0.45 mm. Right now, if your design is much more stringent and you can only allow a 2 degrees increase in temperature, the trace width has to increase. This is because if you remember the formula of resistance of a track of a piece of copper, it is essentially the especially a two-dimensional track. It is how long, I mean, the resistance is directly proportional to the length of track and inversely proportional to width of the track. So if you decrease the length, you can possibly get away with a smaller trace width. But if you increase the length, yeah, you can increase the resistance increasing here. So this is how you can figure out for the current that you are using in your design, what is the trace width that is needed. let's go back to PCB and look at other thumb rules. So one thing that you need to see is that in this particular design, we have made sure that there are no 90 degrees turns on the tracks. You have to make sure that uh, this is the reason because especially for very high frequency signals, there can be RF low frequency, sorry, low amplitude RF generated when there is a sharp turn on the tracks, um, and it just looks much more professional when you're doing a 45-degree turn as compared to a 90-degree turn. Other thing that I would recommend is to keep all the signals in on one track and use the other on one side and other side for ground. So in this particular case, we did this particular track on the bottom side just to show you. As you can see, this is here. But in practice, you need to put all the tracks on the same side. And whenever there is um, in any component present, you can add bias for ground so that there is a short path to the ground on the other side. So to do that, let's say we delete this track and this way, and so this 90-degree turn is not recommended. So we'll have a 45-degree turn. And go back here. And so we can add wires to all various places of the PCB. So I'm still again using X to draw the routes and then V to add a wire. And as you can see here, I've made a 90-degree turn, but this doesn't matter now because now there is a ground plane on the PCB. So actually the PCB would look something like this. On the top layer, it looks like this with all the ground planes. And on the bottom layer, it looks like this. So the track that we did, it is covered by the ground plane of ground in this particular case. So there is no actual 90-degree turn because there's no track at all. When we see this in 3D vision, you can see that there are all these wires which connect the top ground plane with the bottom ground plane. So there is a shorter path for the signal from all the different points on the board. So in this particular design, we have added ground planes on both the top and bottom layers. So this particular view here on the left hand side shows all the field areas, but usually when you are making a PCB design, my preference is to use this particular view where it shows the edge of the planes but doesn't show the actual planes so that it's easier to route and visualize the board. So now we look at something else, another plane that we can add, which is a keep off plane, which is if you want a particular area to not have any copper on it, you can add a keep out plane. So in this particular place, if we want a corner of the PCB to not have copper, because maybe say there is a, a mounting point coming there. So in that particular case, we add a keep out plane. So we both add on front and bottom keyboard tracks, keyboard wires, and also we'll add keyboard copper port. Okay. So actually this can be quite a this need not be a rectangle. Although for the first design we'll make a rectangle. This can be any format. So this keyport area has been added. So now we can see in the 3D design that this keyport area doesn't have any copper on the front or the back side. Like I mentioned, this keyport area can be a complex design as well. So if we put only on front, we keep our copper cores. And so if this is the keyboard area and I am clicking on B to refill area again, and you can see the design here. So the copper area is removed from this keyboard area. So as you can see, I've been using the 3D view quite often. It is a quite an important tool when you're designing a PCB, so that you have a clear visualization of what you're working from, as if you're looking at a PCB physically. Many times when you're deep in designing a PCB, you won't have a big picture view. And as in that particular case, this 3D viewer will be of quite valuable tool. Right, so let's take a look at SensePy as a product, and then look at how we have come up with um, designing the product, right from what it needs to do, how we chose the components, how we design the circuitry, and the user experience. So let's open the first version of the design. As you can see, this is schematic. So before this, I would want to go over to the product page of SensePy. So that you have an idea of the product. SensePy is a motion sensor that detects movement of heat. It is especially used to detect motion of wild animals in forests, so that it can trigger cameras automatically. So as you can see, there is a lens on SensePy, which is called a Fresnel lens, and it directs the infrared light that is emitted from our bodies, which is usually in the long wave infrared, in the 8 to 14 nanometer, 8 to 14 micrometer range, and that light is focused on a PIR sensor. So the PIR sensor is what you can see here. PIR sensor are usually dual element sensor but sometimes it can be a 4-element sensor. What you mean by dual element sensor is that um, there are two elements in the PIR which are in series but in flipped direction. So the positive of one is at the top and next one is connected negative together. So this means that it can only detect movement of heat only when there is a differential output from these two pair sensors, because they receive different amounts of infrared radiation on them. So this signal is um, given out using a source follower JFET. So that is the output of a PIR sensor. So there are different options for PIR sensors um, from different manufacturers. We use the DS204B. Um, there is also the LHI 968, which is available, although that's much more expensive. So that's the PIR sensor, right? So now, apart from the PIR sensor, what all are needed in this system? We need a circuitry to process this signal, which means it needs to a do filtering, both low pass and high pass filtering, which is the band pass filtering, and it needs to amplify the signal in this desired frequency range. Um, so we need a circuitry for that. Um, we would need batteries and power connection to the system. We would need a processor to be able to capture this signal from the PIR sensors amplified output. Um, we would need a connector to connect the camera, and we would need a button for the user to interact with the system, as well as LED to give the various modes that the system is present in. So overall, these are the different components present in the system. Um, because this configuration button is very limited to set the various parameters that you can see in the system, where there are different modes of operation um, that the SensePy can work in. We used a mobile application that you can see here to configure the SensePy. For this, this communication between the mobile application as well as the SensePy is over Bluetooth Low Energy, which is a low power wireless communication methodology, which is present in almost all consumer mobile phones. So for this, we had to use a processor either with an external radio transceiver or a system on chip which has the processor as well as the radio peripheral in the same silicon. So we went for the later and used the NRF52 system on chip. So with this background, let's take a look at the entire schematic. So we have two AA batteries powering the system. This is because in the field, in the jungle, the forest, wherever they're setting up these systems, it's easier to replace using batteries made which are available commonly and ubiquitously than trying to have a USB charger, which it's harder to charge on the field. It's just easier to replace batteries. So that's the reason why we chose two AA batteries. And it can work with both rechargeable and non-rechargeable batteries. Next is a PMOS. We're using a PMOS for reverse voltage, reverse polarity protection. So what are the different, how do we choose a PMOS, right? So for this, we can look, we can go to any vendor for PMOS and try to see how how to choose this component. So as you can see, we need a single MOSFET. Here are the various filtering fields that are available. So let's start from, we are not very concerned about the manufacturer or the packaging or the series. We would like an active component, right? So that we can choose. We want a P channel MOSFET. We're not very particular about the technology. Drain to source voltage is, in our case, not important because anyway, the battery is only a maximum of 3 volts. Continuous drain current is also not important because the peak current that the system takes is um, about 15 milliamp. So most of them are above 15 milliamp. So we can actually choose that, like say everything about 21 milliamp. The most important aspect that we need to choose is the threshold voltage. So before choosing that, I would say we will filter with just these parameters just to see the PMOS MOSFETs that are available. So now we need to enter the quantity at which the prices are shown. We use 100 quantity because this is a good number which at which you can buy this PMOS MOSFETs. And there'll be good price breaks at 100 quantity. But if you're looking for even higher quantity for manufacturing, you can make it 1000 or even higher. So we sort the components according to the unit price at 100 quantity. So we have this particular component by ROM Semiconductor, and the drain to source voltage is 20 volts, which is fine for us. Continuous drain current is 100 milliamp, that's also perfectly fine. The main thing is VG threshold, which is 1 volt at drain current of 100 microamp. So this is fine for us because the battery voltage is 3 volt, right? So anything like any reverse voltage of like 1 volt minus 1 volt or more will be protected. So if you insert the batteries in reverse, there is protection. So this is a component that we can use. In our case, we used TSM 2301. That's also a reasonably good PMOSFET. Another website that will be quite useful when choosing components is Octopart. Here you can search for various parts across various vendors. So as you can see, it is available across various vendors and the prices that are shown for different quantities. As you can see, when the quantity increases, the price per unit decreases drastically. So the price at 10 quantity is more than double per unit for at 1000 quantity. So that's how we choose a component for reverse polarity protection. For when you're looking at the central processor in a system and the microcontroller that you choose in a system, there are various factors that you can look at because there's so many options for microcontrollers. Nowadays, majority of the microcontrollers, if not in the 8-bit, are usually ARM-based processors. So as I had mentioned earlier, in our particular case, we were looking for a system which had a Bluetooth low energy radio also present inside the silicon, so that it's a system on chip where you can also access the radio peripheral. So in our particular case, we chose the NRF52 family um, because we had a lot of our developers had already worked with NRF52, and it was a platform that we were comfortable at. So there are so many other manufacturers which are also providing system on chips with Bluetooth Low Energy in them, which can be STM32W series by ST Microelectronics. Um, there is the CC2650 by TI. Um, there's a Dialog Semiconductors. We have their own platform with um, SoCs with Bluetooth Low Energy, and so on. So some have some other particular benefits, but for the simple application where you need good processors, decent analog to digital conversion, and some basic peripherals like UART, you cannot go wrong with choosing any of them. Um, some might be more costly than the others, but what you need to also consider is the effort you take for your development. So if you're going and choosing a very new platform, which the price per chip is cheaper, but then you and your engineers would take, say, 3 months to get up to speed and develop the application, as opposed to 1 month with the another platform that you already know quite well. So in that particular case, when you are manufacturing in the small or medium quantity, it is better to choose a platform which you're already comfortable with. The development environment is set up on your systems. You have some experience with prior projects. So in that particular case, it's better to choose a platform which you're already experiencing. When you're manufacturing in very high quantity, say 10,000 units or even say 50,000 units or more, um, then it makes sense to invest in the development effort, choose a component which the per unit price is lowest at that quantity, and put in that development effort, because you have the quantity, and the development effort will be amortized when you are manufacturing. So let's go back to looking at the various other parts of the system and seeing how we choose the components. So for the op-amp, which is needed for the bandpass filtering, the specifications that we needed are quite you know relaxed, in the sense that we didn't need any high frequency op-amps. The main consideration was it should be low power. That was a key point that we were searching for, because it's a always on sensor and it needs to be working continuously. So it needed to be very low power. So for this, TI is a vendor that provides a really good tool to choose components. So if you go to their website and go to their amplifier section, where we can um, look for operational amplifiers and try to see which is the one which is best for us. So here there are various parameters that are present. And so one of the key points that we are looking for is the supply current, which is the IQ. So here we want it to be in single digit microamp. So let's make it 009. So we have now around 51 parts that we can see. So another thing that is important for us is the price, right? So in this particular case, with this very low power current, let's see which is the op-amp which is the least expensive. So as you can see here, they have got various op-amps which are which consume power in the nanoamp region and also are quite low cost. So this TLV 522 series is the cheapest of the lot, and it consumes current at 500 nanoamp for both the channels. So this might be a good op-amp. The one we have chosen is TLV 880 one series, which has a similar current rating. Um, the reason why we chose TLV 8801 instead of TLV 522 is at this point, um, for some reason we couldn't find this, but we further down tested TLV 522 and it also works fine. And it's actually a direct replacement because the footprint is the same between TLV 522 and TLV 8802. So when you're looking at a chip which has various other requirements, so let's say the gain bandwidth product needs to be higher, uh, the offset voltage needs to be quite low, and so on. You can, put in those parameters and then decide which is the package and the component that you want. So this way we came up with all the different components for the system, and we designed the PCB that we saw earlier. So as you can see here, this is the PCB. Initially, we designed the PCB for an off-the-shelf enclosure that we were um, buying and then in drilling and routing through a CNC machine to make the opening for the CNC for the Fresnel lens as well as the um, the configuration button and the connector for the camera. In the next version of the design, which I shall show you now, we designed the complete enclosure ourselves. So with this, the entire PCB design had to change according to the enclosure. So here's the PCB design and the enclosure is over here. That we initially 3D printed to check with the PCB design. So in your 3D printing, you can do FDM 3D printing initially to have a rough idea of how the various parts come together. Then you can use an SLA 3D printing, which is even more expensive, but is quite precise. And then once you're sure of your design, you can use injection molding to mass manufacture. So now let's take a look at how you need to give your design for manufacturing. So now for when you're manufacturing, there are various parameters that you can play around with. So as you can see, if your design is say 30 centimeter by 70 centimeter PCB, how do you optimize for cost? right? So now, as you can see, when the PCB quantity is 10, the manufacturing cost is around 2,700 rupees for line circuits. But if you make it 100, the cost goes to 7,400. So which is nowhere near 10 times the cost, right? So when you are increasing the number of PCBs ordered, the quantity per PCBs reduces drastically. So this is the instant quotation engine that they are using, where you can get the quotation for various manufacturing processes as well as the um, parameters of the PCB. Let's upload this design and see how we can order for PCB. So let's create a new project here. So this is the cover of the simple project that we created. So as you can see in the project details, the board area is 13.5 square centimeter. Was it created by, and you can see the quotation. So right, um, when we use custom service, then we can see how the price changes for various parameters. So if you make the PCB um, of different thickness, right, the price changes. And also, if you make the copper thickness also larger, the price changes. So these are parameters that you can um, play around with. So also you can use different mask colors, but then also price changes. A major factor for changing a price is when you use gold plating on your PCBs. So in this particular case, the price jumps quite a bit. So um, usually custom service for manufacturing of PCB is much more expensive. So if you use a standard service in various vendors, which where they add your own PCB with all the other people who order PCBs. So in that particular case, it can get quite inexpensive. So let's say for 6 PCBs of this design, it only costs 1,179. So finally, let's look at how there were some differences from the first version of SensePy to this version. So one of the things that we saw is that in the first version, there is an LED which we use in reverse bias to also check for the light intensity. So in this particular case, as you can see, there are two color LEDs, red and green. And for the green LED, we actually connect this point to the ADC so that you can see the when it is not forward biased, you can see how much light is incident on the LED to be able to measure um, the light intensity of the ambient light. So this is a clever hack solution. It works properly, but the thing is, you have to now make sure that you cannot show any color or indication and communicate to the user when you are doing light sensing. That increases complexity in the software. So we, in the next version, we chose to use a low-cost LDR to measure the ambient light. So that is one difference. Another difference is because there was no way to keep track of the time in this version. So we used an external RTC, which I'll show you, and a backup battery in the next version. So as you can see, we have an RTC here, which is the PCF8563T, uh, and a battery here, a coin cell here, so that even when the main power is removed, you have a backup power for this RTC. So this will make sure that the time of the system is kept um, even when there is no power and the user is changing batteries. And the majority of the changes were rerouting of the entire system and making it compatible with our own custom enclosure. So in many cases, because it's easier to manufacture and reiterate on electronics, it's better to focus on that first with a off-the-shelf enclosure. And once you see that there's a good market fit and there is value provided to the customers, then you can start iterating on the enclosure design. So this is the process that we followed with SensePy, wherein we first used an off-the-shelf enclosure, saw that users across India and Europe were happy with the design and the functionality that we offered, and then we redesigned the enclosure, made it suitable for mass manufacturing with injection molding, and then we also redesigned the electronics on the PCBs to follow that. So that's about it. Please feel free to contact me at p@earthlord.io. You can find other contact and other information about me on my LinkedIn page. Thank you very much for Cisco for providing this platform for making this happen, the Thinkubator platform, as well as Li2 to facilitate in making this happen. Until next time, bye-bye.